On today's episode of EdexLive, we are in conversation with a young mind shaping the future with ideas far beyond his years. Hridank Garodia, known for his sharp thinking, creative problem solving, and a drive that's impossible to miss. Hridank represents a new generation of thinkers who aren't just dreaming big, but building it. Let's dive into his journey, his inspirations, and the vision that fuels him. Hi Hridank, welcome to EdexLive.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me here.
So you discovered CO2 level as high as 1500 ppm in classrooms. What was the exact moment when you realized I have to build a solution myself instead of waiting for an existing one?
So this story is actually very funny. I moved to a new school building and I expected to have better infrastructure, more concentration, as one would expect, right? But surprisingly so, me and many of my classmates, we experienced more fatigue, headaches, and loss of concentration. Initially, of course, I brushed it off. Maybe I thought, okay, this is like a single day event. Maybe tomorrow will be better. When it happened consistently, I realized that there's this thing called sick building syndrome, where when you stay in an indoor space for too long, there's a lot of indoor CO2 and other pollutants that build up, which can cause fatigue, headaches, and poor concentration. And so the more I read about it, the more frustrated I became because existing purifiers, air purifiers that are there, only remove particulate matter and other pollutants, but they don't have much focus on carbon dioxide. So then I realized that there's no device that's purely built around the CO2 reduction. And that's what I decided to focus on. And that's what really drove me to create Aerovive.
So microalgae-based filtration is technically complex even for adult researchers. What was the biggest scientific difficulty in translating a simple idea into a working, scalable system like Aerovive?
That's a very good question. So the core challenge here wasn't proving that, oh, microalgae can reduce CO2. That's already proven by past research. Making a system that can behave consistently, predictably in real rooms and not just controlled experiments within laboratories. The three main things that I feel were the challenges. One is predictable. So algae growth is very variable. It can fluctuate with temperature, light, nutrient levels, and early reactors have behaved differently on a hot afternoon versus a cool morning. And so I had tests. I actually conducted this research and I found that certain tests showed that the same setup behaved completely different on different times of day. And so this predictability was the first challenge that I faced. Second, safety. Since it's a living culture, the contamination is also a massive issue. If anything unwanted gets inside the device, the culture will die very fast. So creating a reactor, bioreactor, which has certain seals, certain technical requirements, such that contamination is not an issue. That was the second technical difficulty that I faced. And the third difficulty of this threefold is making the device process continuous because algae, microalgae in particular, they grow very, very fast, but they also plateau very soon because their population reaches a maximum. So if the density of the microalgae get too high or the nutrients run out, CO2 uptake will drop sharply. And so creating this continuous performance is another technical difficulty that I faced. So yeah, there was a lot of challenges along the way.
Your prototype evolved from basic tube and boxes to an automated modular system. Which version taught you the toughest engineering lesson, and what failure or breakthrough changed the entire direction of Aeroview?
Right, that's a good question. So my prototype actually consists of three versions, three broad versions. Obviously, there's been sub iterations within those, but so there's version one, version two, and version three. And if I had to say one version that taught me the toughest engineering lesson would probably be version two, for the pure reason that so initially version one, it was a very basic pump, and so when I went to version two, I made it a stronger pump with where pushed air into the bioreactor at a much higher rate. And so on paper, it does sound like it means better contact, better mixing, and more CO2 fixation per minute. But the crucial challenge that I faced here, or the lesson that I learned, was like managing the inflow and the outflow because the outflow of air wasn't as fast as the inflow, which created these micro pressure points at certain edges of the reactor, which led to tiny leaks along the joints, which wasn't too dramatic, but it was enough that the untreated room air started mixing with the processed air, and so the efficiency data was skewed, and the readings made very little sense because of this fundamental issue. So what I did to combat this, so I designed a version 3 for this. So the first thing I did was I did the math. I saw the inflow versus the outflow rate, and I was able to balance them. I also created modular shorter reactors instead of one long column to improve the pressure pockets. And I created obviously more robust sealing so that we didn't have those leaks anymore. And I also learned something from it. So the fact that the increase in power doesn't always mean the system is better. And yeah, that was my fundamental toughest engineering lesson that I faced. Actually, I've been working on this project now for about 4 years. I believe I began in the ninth grade, ninth summer. First, there was a lot of background research that really went into seeing, oh, like, is this fundamentally feasible? And so when I did that background research based on prior literature, of course, I then needed to optimize the photosynthetic efficiency for carbon and other pollutant capture. So I conducted research in a laboratory where I optimized these certain metrics for the microalgae. I used a certain species of microalgae called Chlorella vulgaris, and I optimized this. Then I used these optimum conditions to create a device that as I mentioned earlier, solved these three fundamental problems. The one that feels predictable, safe, and continuous. And I created the first prototype, and then first prototype was extremely basic, obviously just as a proof of concept. Then I went to the second prototype, which was much more advanced. But I spoke about the issues with the second prototype as well, right? And then I went to the third prototype, which is currently the prototype. But yeah, I mean, there's future development also that I envision. So yeah.
You worked with experts from IIT Bangalore and Harvard, right? What was an insight or advice from these mentors that completely shifted the way you approach biodesign and sustainability?
I remember one professor at IIT Bombay, he told me this one thing about designing anything that's user friendly or scalable. And that he told me that a product will only scale when the person who's using the product doesn't need to be explained how to use it. Very simply, it just means that if I'm giving people such long instructions about, oh, this is what you do, this is how you run it, this is how the product works, then he said it won't end up scaling them because people only purchase what's instinctively going to work. And if they don't instinctively know how something's going to work, they have less trust over it. So that was also something I learned from version 2. And I was able to improve that in version 3 by reducing some of the user steps, such as simplifying the refills, adding auto calibration of the gas pump. So some of those technical details were also fine tuned after this advice that I got.
So, Aeroview performs the work of 40 house plants in a single unit. As you move towards deployment across corporate parks, schools, and clinics, what is your biggest challenges?
Right. So obviously, a lot of these are very important problems. The policy, of course, is a little bit further down the road because we haven't come to that because it's just been piloting right now in private spaces. So policy right now has not been an issue yet. Obviously, that's further down the road. We're going to look at that in the future. I would say currently, manufacturing is the toughest issue that we're facing because Aerovive, firstly, the device is novel and patent pending, and it mixes biology with hardware. So most manufacturers, at least from what I've explored till now, are used to only building either entirely electronic or fluidic systems, and not a combination of both. So getting someone to take on manufacturing a one of a kind, innovative, novel design requires very long discussions and prototype demonstrations and very high initial MOQs. So many of these places actually that are contacted want proven volume before committing to manufacturing them, which is literally a paradox for any new technology. That's one of the fundamental problems that we face. Apart from this, awareness is also a problem, but it's surprisingly easier by comparison because once people see their indoor carbon dioxide jump to 1200 plus parts per million in a room, the problem itself is very self-evident. Like the way I realized it, other people will also realize it. So awareness is more of a communication challenge, while manufacturing is more of a structural challenge. And so I think manufacturing is definitely more critical of a problem.
So, your education initiative has already reached over 1,000 students. What's the most surprising reaction you have seen from the kids when they first discover algae or bacteria? Has any movement made you think this is exactly why I started this?
Yeah. So what I've really learned about children when doing these sessions is that they tend not to be polite. They just tend to brutally, honestly say what they're thinking. And so one thing that I remember is in one workshop, a 14-year-old was looking at certain algae cultures. He said, if this is such a valid solution, why don't offices, clinics, gyms already use this stuff if CO2 really is that big of a problem? And so, and he wasn't trying to be sarcastic when saying it. He was just being straightforward. And I really didn't have an answer because I wasn't able to tell him that, oh, this is the reason that it's not being implemented already. Just it to me, it just unveiled this real gap between science and real adoption. And so that moment reminded me why I really began both Aerovive for this real adoption and the Invisible Heroes Lab, this educational program in the first place, which is to get students and eventually organizations to question these basics, such as what we can do to improve even the most basic things, to question that. Right.
So balancing research, prototypes, schools, and national level science fair is no small feast. How do you handle the pressure?
Right. So that's a great question. So for me, I tend to focus on these two main aspects critical to my life. Number one is prioritization. I essentially try to plan my work around the entire week, and it's planned by the category of how important it is. So certain thing is non-negotiable. Like I have to do it regardless of what my situation is. For example, schoolwork, other deadlines, those have to be done regardless of what the situation is. So they go in top priority, and then everything else gets slotted below that in following a prioritized manner. And so that really, even if I'm not able to complete everything, as long as I'm going from top priority to lower, I'm able to do the most important things. And I think that really helps me, and it stops me from overcommitting as well. And the second thing that I rely on very strongly is systems. So I try to have a system for my life, I would say, in the way I do things. So, for example, when it comes to experiments, I keep detailed experiments logs, checklists. Oh, I have to check Aerovive. I have to check this part of Aerovive, that part of Aerovive, and fixed routines for when I have to maintain my prototype. And so it removes this like burden on me that, oh, I have to take a decision now. Should I check it now? Should I check it tomorrow? I have these systems. So like every week at this time and on this day, I will check this. So those systems really help me move forward in that sense and handle the pressure.
If AeroView reaches your dream scale, how do you envision indoor air in India changing in the next decade? What role do young innovators like to play in shaping that transformation?
If technologies like Aerovive do scale in the future, I hope to see. So number one, actually, I've begun seeing. So I don't know if you've noticed this, but nowadays when there's a new building being constructed in a metropolitan area. So I live in Mumbai now, and I believe it's compulsory. I've been seeing this at least. I see air pollution guidelines. So like on the side of the building, oh like PM 2.5 and X value, PM 10 X value. So I think this mandate by the government is really considering this air pollution to be a real issue, which I'm very glad to see. But what I think should also happen is this should come indoors as well. This mandate for having air quality displays should go into indoor spaces like schools, offices, clinics, where they should also have CO2 and AQI screens, the same way these buildings also have them on the outside. This is the first thing that I hope to see. The second thing that I hope to see from this project, maybe 10 years in the future, is living systems integrated into a large scale infrastructure. So that's exactly what Aerovive is, right? So it's microalgae, which is a living, breathing system integrated into indoor spaces. And so I want to see more of these types of things, biopanels, hybrid biological, mechanical purifiers. And I want these to become like the standard in infrastructure and not just like special features that maybe one clinic or one school will have. And I do think the role of student innovators in this is very crucial because I hope that my work can show that students can also build serious deployable solutions in the real world. I hope the next decade will see many of these students come up with many innovative new projects on maybe air, water, food systems, and microbial engineering. That's what I want to see.
So my final question is, how is AeroView different from other purifier which is already available in the market?
The fundamental difference. So, number one, normal purifiers that one may have at home, they purify only PM 2.5, PM 10 particles. They're unable to actually purify carbon dioxide because the filtration process that uses to do it just doesn't have that capability. So there's some ionization process which they use which just cannot do it, right? So that's the first fundamental reason why Aerovive is different, because Aerovive can do filtration of both these particulate matter particles along with carbon dioxide, which really makes it truly novel. Apart from that, thanks to my research in a laboratory, I've been really able to optimize this process of purification. So I think I've really been able to make it efficient and rapid, which also I think would make Aerovive quite innovative.
So, Hridank, thank you very much for being here. It was wonderful talking to you, and all the best for your innovation and future.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I had a great time.
What began as a classroom problem became a nationwide solution. And at just 17, Hridank Garodia reminds us that curiosity is the first step toward impact. From Aerovive's breakthrough in clean air innovation to empowering over 1,000 students through the Invisible Heroes Lab, his journey is a testament to what young minds can achieve when guided by purpose. Stay connected with EdexLive for more conversations with inspiring young achievers. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing.